Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining the webinar here today. My name is Jacob Simonov. I'm a product marketing manager at Veeam, covering Veeam Vault. And today I'm joined by Alan Murphy. Alan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jacob. Happy to be here. My name is Alan. I'm a product manager on the Kasten team, focusing on our management platforms as a service and things like Vault, as we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for joining. So today our topic, of course, is inside Veeam Vault. We'll get into what the product does and involve its exciting capabilities, as well as exciting use cases that you can to leverage the product and all of our new extended workload support as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So first, I'd like to lay the lay of the land here with the what's happening in the industry today, so that you understand the relevance of the product for you. So first, of course, data is absolutely exploding in the industry today. In 2024, we had over 150 zettabytes of data created, and it's actually still doubling every single year. I don't anticipate any trends to slow this down. Of course, AI is continuing to increase their importance and relevancy of data. We have significant data reuse, and really just data is continually becoming and solidifying itself as the lifeblood of all of our organizations. So data is absolutely exploding, and that comes with this perfect storm of complexity as well. With this increased volume, this also means that there's an increased complexity with the way that we run our infrastructure. According to our research, 92% of organizations already employ some sort of hybrid cloud strategy, meaning they're using something on premises as well as the cloud. And this is really to ensure that their data is as available as possible. And again, with that increasing volume and importance of it, vendor lock-in continues to be a complexity factor in the industry as well, with about 3 years for IT hardware refresh. And then on the threat side of things, ransomware continues to be surging. AI is also proliferating, its frequency as well as its complexity. And according to our own in-house 2025 ransomware trends report, we're actually seeing that 89% of ransomware attacks are explicitly targeting backups. So what does this mean for you all? Well, that's why at Veeam, we've devised the 32110 rule for backups. And in the industry overall, you typically hear it as just 321. So that would be 3 different copies, 2 different media. Typically, let's say like something on premises and in the cloud, like you saw on the previous slide, 92% of organizations are doing some sort of hybrid mix like that. Then we have one offsite copy. And then what we've extended at Veeam is that we also recommend having one offline air gap or immutable copy, and then 0 errors when testing your backups, so that when the data comes and you actually do need to call on those backups, you have the confidence that you will ensure business continuity with that 0 error verification. Now, also the reason I wanted to bring this up is that to maximize your protection, and again, to maximize your protection, it is a very common route to actually use cloud to be one of those 2 different media, but also to rely on it for your offsite copy. And it can also be configured in this offline air gap or immutable way. So in this case, with some solution like Veeam Data Platform plus Veeam Kasten, and then you employ like a Veeam Vault, which I'll explain more in a little bit here. But these together help you adhere to this 32110 rule with ease. But there really are other pain points as well that come with this offsite storage generally if you're not using Veeam Vault. What we have is overall just delivering and maintaining cloud storage is significantly challenging. One of the top business challenges that we're seeing specifically is related to cost, where 84% of organizations, I believe, cite managing cloud expenses as the #1 challenge for their business. And why is this the case? Well, there's a lot more to cloud expenses when you're doing storage than beyond just that actual capacity. You have to pay for egress fees, your read and write APIs, data retrieval costs, and all of these are actually quite significant. I've seen cloud bills where the capacity and those additional factors are honestly 1-to-1, so it can literally double your expense. And if you're not expecting this, you'll experience that bill shock, and this can be a strain on your IT organization, and we entirely like to avoid this. So this is a common pain point with cloud and using it for the offsite backup on your own. Then we also have issues typically with architecting things securely. So that would be like getting immutability set up correctly so that no one's able to modify your data both internally or externally, ensuring you have encryption so that your data is unreadable to those threat actors, and following zero trust best practices with logical separation, and ensuring multiple resilience zones. So these, while possible, could be difficult to architect yourself, which also takes me to the last pain point, which is just having that overall expertise on your team and just the resources to manage that, which is the third biggest pain point with the cloud. And here I kind of listed it as also just integrating with your backup solution. You ideally want something that works well with what you have so that your IT team is familiar with it and can manage this offsite experience with no issue and help your business adhere to the 3-2-1-1-0 rule. And like I said, unfortunately, that's not entirely the reality, but that's what we set out to fix here at Veeam. And that's why we introduced Veeam Cloud Vault, which is our fully managed and pre-secured cloud storage resource, which eliminates the headaches of managing infrastructure and unpredictable cloud cost models. All you need to do quite literally is let us know how much you need in terms of capacity, and we'll handle the rest. It is fully integrated with Veeam Data Platform and Veeam Kasten, all with a flat per terabyte pricing model. Of course, built on the foundation of radical resilience here at Veeam, and leveraging our foundational AI capabilities. Now, I'll get into the actual pillars of the product as well and what you can expect as far as the details. So on the security front, Veeam Vault is always secure for you. We offer logical air gapping from production and secure access control, so that if any threat actor potentially gets access, let's say, to your cloud storage, they're not going to be able to gain access to that production data. There's secure access control there and this logical air gap in place so that you have those multiple resilience zones effectively running. Secondly, Veeam Vault is always immutable by default. We use worm state, which is write once, read many, which essentially again guarantees that any internal actor, we can prevent those human errors happening, so they can't accidentally delete or modify something, but also those external, ransomware actors as well. We can stop them from exfiltrating data, deleting anything, or modifying it. This is a significant feature that is required, to really have like a ransomware-proof solution. And then lastly, we have encryption. So you are the only one who would hold the keys. We use AES 256-bit, and it is both encrypted in flight and at rest, so that if anyone gets access to it, again, the data would remain unreadable, and that is also a significant layer of protection for you. Next, Veeam Vault is always easy to use, so we are immediately available via multiple channels and cloud marketplaces. So it's available on demand. It's fully managed, so there's zero configuration, management, or integration efforts. Like I said, it's entirely integrated with Veeam Data Platform or Veeam Kasten. So if you're already a customer and you're familiar with those interfaces, it will be quite easy to set it up and run your storage and backup all in one place. And later in the presentation, you'll see this all in action and some screenshots within the product. So again, fully managed and highly available for you. Then lastly, we also have high durability, some of the highest that you would see in the market here. We have up to 12 nines of durability, and durability as the definition of it is essentially how resistant your data is to data loss or corruption. So in the case here of 12 nines, which we're able to offer, that would mean that you're able to withstand a full data center outage. If you're with our advanced edition, which I'll also explain soon, kind of our breakdown between there. And then lastly, Veeam Vault is always predictable. I know I mentioned the burden of the unpredictable cloud cost models. Well, with Veeam Vault, you could say goodbye to bill shock. We have an all-inclusive pricing model. It's inclusive of that storage, of course, the write and read API calls, data retrieval, and egress fees, all of which I mentioned earlier as like a top pain point to predict and manage. Well, with Veeam Vault, you could say goodbye to that, like I said. Secondly, it's always scalable. So if you have suddenly a need for more capacity, you're able to grow really easily with simple code terming. And Veeam Vault is built on Azure Blob Cool tier, so you're getting the highest restored performance, but also at the economical tier and ensuring fast recovery that works for your business there. So like I said, I'll also get into the two editions. Now, both Foundation and Advanced offer everything that you have just seen on the previous slides, but there's a few small differences here. So with the Foundation, you're starting at $14 per terabyte per month. You're gaining 11 nines of durability, so your data would be replicated 3 times across one data center. You're getting fair use read and restore, so that's about 20%. You have to choose the country where you want your vault to be spun up, and your data, of course, will be always immutable and encrypted, as well as all the previous features like I had mentioned on the previous slides. Now, if you choose to upgrade and run with the Advanced Edition, so that would come in at a little bit of a higher price point at $24 per terabyte per month, but you're gaining an additional 9 of durability, which again would be your data replicated across 3 different data centers, meaning that you're able to withstand a full data center outage if that happens. And you're getting unlimited read and restore. And then as far as data locality, you also gain the advantage of not only choosing your country, but you actually choose a specific cloud region you'd like, whereas with Foundation, we would, as Veeam, would choose the actual data center within the country of your choice. So that's our 2 additions here. Both offer simple, predictable pricing, and both are making secure cloud storage easy for you. So now with all of that, I wanted to, of course, show you all exactly what Veeam Vault does and the value that we bring. But now I want to also get into just exactly how easy it is to migrate your data to Veeam Vault, helping you accelerate your cloud journey without those typical pain points that come with it. And also, as a note, every source is actually different, but this is a general rule of thumb that should apply for most situations here. So first, let's say that you're and your business currently are in the situation where you have no cloud repository today, and you're beginning your journey with cloud-based backup storage in general. Well, in this case, using Vault is definitely straightforward as well. All you need to do, as you see in the screenshot, is you simply add Vault as a repository within your Veeam backup and replication server. Then you proceed to update your backup policy to target Vault. And then definitely don't forget to enable storage encryption. And this would give you, of course, that added security. And just like that, you're beginning to protect your data in the cloud. Now, also, any volume of data works with Veeam Vault. It's simple, no matter how much volume you have. If your goal is to maintain a secondary copy of your on-premises backup data in the cloud, within VBR, the process is super easy once again. All you need to do is configure a secondary target within your backup job, or you could just set up a new backup copy job. And depending on your configuration, Veeam will transfer either all existing restore points and new ones, or just those latest backups. So you have that flexibility and peace of mind with your data protection strategy. And just also looking at the screenshot in greater detail, you can see the transfers in real time on the bottom of here at the middle of the screen. So in this example, there is a 3.3 gigabyte VMware file transfer, and it's moving at 335 megabytes per second. So you're able to see that process in real time, and of course it will work just fine no matter the volume that you're looking to transfer. Now, if you already have backups in the cloud and you're ready to start taking advantage of Vault, making the switch is also quick and easy. All you need to do is navigate to your cloud backups, right-click on the job, and then from there you select the option to move your backups. Of course, choose Vault as your new backup repository, and within this simple step, you're now protecting your data with this out-of-the-box, enterprise-grade, secure cloud storage solution, ensuring your backups are safe, compliant, and ready whenever you need them. And then our final scenario here is if you're using a scale-out repository already, but you want to replace it with one of the extents with Vault. That process is once again fully simple. All you need to do is seal the extent you wish to replace, add Vault as a new extent, and then initiate the evacuation process. Veeam will automatically transfer your existing backups to Vault and begin leveraging it as part of that scale-out repository that you have. So once again, fully effortless way to just upgrade and secure this out-of-the-box storage for your business. Your data will remain protected, scalable, and future-ready no matter what gets thrown in the direction of your business. So that was overall so far in the presentation. We've covered what Veeam Vault does, what the value of it is, how easy it is to set it up no matter what your situation is and where you are in your cloud journey. And now I want to get into one exciting use case that we've seen many customers employ, which is essentially disaster recovery without a hot site. So first, just to set the foundation, so a hot site, of course, is a fully operational backup facility that's equipped with hardware, software, network connectivity, and all of the up-to-date data, essentially a copy of your primary environment. And the advantages of this is that you have minimal downtime, and your operations are able to resume within minutes if you have an outage at your primary location. They're also geographically separate, so you're not going to have them located in the same location. If your primary data goes down, your hot site that's in a different location should not also go down, and you're able to continue your fully, always on operations for your business. And you're also gaining the advantage of real-time replication, where your recovery points are essentially close to zero. But there's all these strong advantages, but it comes with a significant cost. It requires constant updates. You're paying for hardware, software, network, really everything that you could run your business on there. And of course, it's also designed essentially to sit idle and be underutilized. So it's a high expense for the significant advantages, but this is why I'm excited to introduce that Veeam Vault could actually be leveraged to still give you those advantages without having to pay for this high cost underutilized hot site. So how exactly does it complement your DR strategy? Well, you can retain those benefits, like I said, of a hot site, but you don't actually have to pay and maintain one. The process is very simple here. So once you're using Veeam Vault, your data is already located in the cloud. So the next step is just simply to directly restore it to Azure, and you can have no egress fees there. And then third, since Azure has compute capabilities already available to it, you're then able to spin up your application and all your data and begin to run your business there within the cloud. So what does this mean overall? Our fourth step here is really that just you're effectively running a cost-effective disaster recovery strategy. You're only paying for that hot site experience when you're actually using it, not sitting idle in the background. In the case of something happening, really you just spin it up with super fast, have that disaster recovery ready to go, and only pay for it when you need it. And here's just a quick architectural diagram to lay out the additional flow here. But essentially, you have your on-premises or cloud-based services, and you back them up to Vault. Then you orchestrate that conversion and instantiation of those instances as Azure VMs. Then through Veeam Data Platform or Veeam Kasten, you connect that to the Azure environment through a proxy. And then again, the conclusion here is that you have data resilience and business continuity. All you're backing up your data to this newly located resources. All of them are going to Veeam Vault. So that's what you get here. It's an exciting way to have all those advantages of a hot site, but not have to pay the burden of what that comes with. And now I'd like to pass that off to Alan, where he'll cover some of our newly supported Kubernetes stateful data. Take it away.
Awesome, Jacob. Thank you for that. Thank you for the intro to Vault. And as you mentioned, I'm going to dig in a little bit about Kasten and how we can use Vault to protect our Kubernetes stateful data. So we'll talk about Kasten as a product, a little background there, and then we'll give you a couple of use cases on what that looks like with Vault. So if you're not familiar with Kasten, it is Veeam's data protection platform for Kubernetes. It is Kubernetes native, so it's designed specifically to protect that persistent data that you have stored in your Kubernetes clusters, and do that in a way, as we'll see with Vault, that you can secure that data and then make sure that it's always readily available to restore for situations like disaster recovery or ransomware attacks, or a couple other scenarios we'll walk through. Kasten is designed specifically for Kubernetes, as you would imagine, but it is designed for cloud native use cases. So anybody who's deployed Kubernetes clusters either on-prem in a cloud environment, managed cloud environment, for example, if you're running in Azure AKS, managing your Kubernetes clusters through AKS, then Kasten is designed to install seamlessly into those environments and then pick up data protection directly from your persistent volumes that are being run and managed by those AKS clusters. Ideally, this is usually either managed by a backup administrator or oftentimes a Kubernetes administrator. And we all know that Kubernetes administrator role can kind of vacillate between a tried and true sysadmin role into a DevOps role. But it's basically anybody who's responsible for managing those Kubernetes clusters, and in particular, managing the data that is running or that's being stored on those Kubernetes clusters. And oftentimes this can span, as I mentioned, from the backup administrator to the DevOps administrator to a dedicated Kubernetes administrator. Basically, anybody who's responsible for maintaining availability of those clusters and the data within those clusters, Kasten is a great choice to help you protect the data and keep that data readily available. We are focused on the full data protection lifecycle within Kubernetes. So once those persistent volumes are created and you have various services that are writing to those PVs, being able to back them up, being able to automatically back them up either based on a policy or some other event that you would like to trigger in your CI/CD pipeline, for example, but being able to fully integrate with that Kubernetes cluster and the lifecycle of the data. So as the data is written to those PV persistent volumes, or again on a schedule, maybe nightly you're doing backups of all the critical data that you are storing in those PVs, whatever works for your environment, Kasten runs native within that cluster, grabs the data, encrypts it, backs it up via a local snapshot, and then exports it to an external location, as we'll see with Vault. But it is designed to be a part of your day-to-day data lifecycle protection throughout that Kubernetes cluster, wherever you're storing the data or however you're managing that data. One of the key things that we focus on in the Kubernetes world with Kasten is the data mobility and availability of the data that's coming from those persistent volumes. So whether we're talking about, as I mentioned, disaster recovery, or application mobility, which is really becoming an interesting trend in the Kubernetes world of moving from some self-managed on-prem environment into something like Azure AKS for a managed environment. Being able to move that data with the application services as you're spinning up new clusters, application mobility and the data that's associated with those applications is really becoming more and more critical as people migrate into more managed environments for Kubernetes. And then, of course, ransomware protection. It's something we all talk about every day. It's something that we all have to deal with every day. But being able to restore from a known, safe, immutable backup pre-ransomware is something that more and more enterprises are looking to include in their data lifecycle plan, so that they can easily flip a switch and say, yes, we've been attacked, but we know when our last backup was performed. We know that it was clean. We know that it's been untouched because it was immutable, and be able to restore in that environment. And with that, let's jump into where Vault and Veeam Vault plays in that scenario. So as I mentioned, Kasten protects data by keeping local snapshots and then exporting that data to an offsite location, as Jacob mentioned, as part of that 321110 scenario of making sure that we have known secure immutable backups offsite, which is the most important part of this conversation. Vault plays that role for Kasten. So with Kasten, we've natively integrated with Vault as what we call a location profile, which is an external repository where you store your encrypted snapshots. In this case, it's Vault. So within Kasten, you configure Kasten to use Vault as an external location or as a location profile. And then when those backups are made and those snapshots are exported, we adhere to the Vault architecture that Jacob went through. So for example, all Vault backups are always immutable. So by default, the data that gets backed up from Kasten into Vault is immutable. So we've got that secure checkbox checked off for us. Also, as Jacob mentioned, it is a worm backup. So we write it and we store it, and that's where it sits for as long as you need it to sit. And I'll show you what that looks like in a demo in just a second. Also, as Jacob mentioned, we have predictable pricing. So with Vault pricing, you know exactly what you're going to pay for the amount of storage. And within Kasten, you have a few different features to optimize that storage. That's something we can dig into either through the Q&A if you have questions. And I apologize, I meant to mention, if you have questions, please do use the questions tab. But happy to kind of talk through some of the features that we have available in Kasten to help control that cost. But on the Vault side, cost is known. So literally the amount of volume or data that you're backing up from a Kubernetes environment to Vault is a known state. So you don't have that sticker shock that Jacob mentioned. But also when we're talking about kind of the change rate and things under the hood with data in persistent volumes, we start to minimize what that footprint looks like. So again, you have more cost optimization and more known cost optimization with Vault. And then because we are talking about Vault and using Azure Cool Storage, there are a couple of best practices that will be important into the two use cases I'm about to talk through. One is that even though ingress and egress costs are covered in Vault subscriptions, there are some architecture best practices you always want to keep in mind. Generally speaking, it's best to run the Kubernetes clusters in the same region that you're running your Vault backups. One, this is for the most access and most readily available access to that data from a speed perspective, from a location perspective, but also just from our architecture and making sure there are no hidden costs anywhere and having a geographically distributed service from the data that you need to restore. We always suggest doing that. And then because Vault is immutable by default, and because Kasten supports immutability out of the box, those two platforms should be in sync in what type of immutability you need. For example, if you stick with 30-day immutability with Vault, we recommend setting immutability in Kasten to 30 days as well. So those two systems are in sync. That's not required, nor is it required to stick at a fixed number like 30 days. Both of those are configurable. We just do require, or recommend, I should say, that you set the value the same for both. So with that, let's dig into a couple of use cases, and then we'll walk through a super quick demo of what it looks like to back up a Kubernetes application and its data into Vault. So the first key use case for Kubernetes and Vault and using Kasten to protect that data is mobilizing your application data with the applications that you might be migrating from one location to another. So for example, if you are currently running Kubernetes clusters on-prem, or perhaps you're using another cloud provider and you want to migrate all of those Kubernetes services, so the Kubernetes infrastructure, your applications, the services, and the data for those services, if those want to be migrated to another location, for example, you want to migrate to Azure, Kasten is designed to bundle all of the data that goes along with the data stored in your persistent volume. So metadata, everything that's in the namespace, CRs, everything that that Kubernetes needs to do a successful restore is bundled with that data. So on-prem, you can run Kasten, back up your data, export that back up to Vault, and then in Azure, for example, you can deploy new AKS clusters and restore all of that application data back from your Vault environment so that those applications come back up just like you were running them on-prem. As Jacob managed, Vault is fully managed, so all you need to care about is getting your data into Vault and then restoring it out in the application migration use case. And it really is well designed for those customers who might be migrating to Azure. We do support from the Kasten side, you can write data to Vault from any location you would like, which is critical for application migration to get that data into Vault from your original location. But it is really, really ideally designed for those Azure environments where we need to restore back out of Vault into an AKS environment, for example. And then the second use case we'll talk about is ransomware and safeguarding that Kubernetes data. A very similar scenario to application migration, but very specifically focused on security and this idea of ransomware. As I mentioned, because Vault is immutable and because Kasten supports immutability out of the box, the idea here is to get a known clean snapshot and exported backup of the data before any security event happens, whether it's ransomware or it's human error, whether tables are accidentally dropped because permissions were not set correctly on your local data store. Any of those scenarios where we need to go back to a snapshot, a literal snapshot in time, and say, yes, I know that the last good backup was Tuesday at 2 a.m. And I know that nobody has touched that data and that data has not changed because it has 2 levels of immutability on it. That's what I need to restore to get back to a working environment and a working state in my Kubernetes cluster. Vault does this out of the box. Kasten supports it out of the box as well. We do encrypt data with user keys before we export it, so you know that data is encrypted and it's secure. And now it just becomes a function of restoring. So I need to restore from my last known export back into, let's say, a clean room cluster. So I need to spin up a complete new clean room cluster, bring that data back in, and bring those applications and that data back online before my security event happened. So really, really clean, fully managed security and ransomware use case for protecting that Kubernetes data. And those are our 2 primary use cases to talk about today. As Jacob mentioned earlier, sources of data into Vault can be just about anything you can imagine. But for this particular conversation, we are specifically talking about Kubernetes data and the ability to restore from Vault into those new Kubernetes clusters. So with that, I'm going to share a quick demo. Bear with me here while I start this. And this demo goes a little quickly. So what I'm going to do is kind of explain it, and then I'll show a bit and I'll pause it and I'll explain and narrate a little more about what we're looking at. But as we start the video, we are looking at the Kasten UI. So this is the primary dashboard that you see when you log in and authenticate to Kasten. A couple of key things to mention here because they are important for what we do in this particular demo. When you log into Kasten and see this dashboard, you see real-time information about how well protected that particular cluster is. So you see in this example, we have 13 applications deployed in our Kubernetes clusters, or the singular cluster. We have 3 of those that are currently being protected by Kasten, so those are quote unquote compliant. We have 10 that are unmanaged, so we are not doing any protection of those particular applications. But this dashboard kind of gives us an opportunity to dig in and find out, what are those 10? Why are they unprotected? But for this demo, we are going to focus on one of them where we do want to back up that data and make them compliant. And then you'll see we've got our activity stream. So what has Kasten been doing over the past 24 hours, and then the actual jobs and actions that we'll see in just a few minutes. So because Vault is a fully managed storage location and part of Veeam Data Cloud, so VDC Vault, because it's part of that VDC platform, the first thing we need to do is we need to tell Kasten to register itself with VDC so that we know which storage accounts in a particular Vault subscription that we need to use. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to Kasten and we're going to start the registration process. This is going to then connect us to VDC. We log in, authenticate. We complete that registration. And then now Kasten is configured to communicate with a particular Vault subscription and storage account in VDC. Once that registration is done with Kasten, we then need to go over to VDC and we need to choose one of those specific storage accounts and now tell it that Kasten is going to be using that particular storage account. So this is a feature in Veeam where you can govern what is writing to which particular storage account. For this use case, we need to go tell it that Kasten is going to start sending Kubernetes exports to a particular storage location. So you'll see a very standard VDC Vault account. I'm going to go through and I'm going to choose which particular storage account I want. And in this case, I'm going to choose one that's in the South Central US. And that's basically telling VDC and Vault that only this storage account is allowed to accept data from a particular Kasten instance. And because we registered that Kasten instance in the first step, we now have a direct connection between that Kasten instance, its snapshot backups and exports, and this particular Vault storage account in South Central US. So this is very important for our immutability chain, let's say, so that we know exactly where the data is coming from and where it's allowed to be written to. And it's part of that, complete supply chain for immutability. So once that option is configured, we then go back to Kasten, and now you'll see that one Vault has been assigned. So now I have the ability to create what's called a location profile. And a location profile is a concept in Kasten where we're setting an export location. As you can see, we support many different export locations. But you'll see Veeam Data Cloud is called out as a specific location service provider. So because we've gone through all the steps we previously saw, we now can just connect directly to VDC Vault. And you'll see here that it happened very quickly, I apologize, but we have a drop-down list of all of the Vault storage accounts that we've previously registered for this specific Kasten instance. So if I'd gone through and chosen all of those storage accounts you saw previously in the demo, in Kasten, you have the ability to choose any of those. So this allows you to create different location profiles for different applications that go to different Vault storage accounts. So if you have business policies in place that say certain applications belong to certain BUs and those applications need to be backed up to a particular Vault storage account for something like chargeback, that's supported in Kasten. And then you'll see we're going to set, in this case, we're going to set our immutability period or protection period to 14 days, which is what we have matched in Vault for this demo. And then we're going to create this location profile. Once a location profile is created, we now go into the application that we want to protect. In this case, we're going to protect our Pacman application. And I've already configured all of the infrastructure to get the data from Kasten into Vault. So now I need to go tell Kasten what I want to protect, at what schedule, what are the security constraints around this backup. Everything that you would normally set up for a Kasten backup, we're now going to go through and set up, in this case, for Pacman. And we're going to choose our very specific Veeam Vault location that we've previously configured. And then I'm just going to let this run because we're just setting a quick run once backup for the sake of this demo. But had I configured multiple Veeam location or Vault location profiles, I would have been able to set different backup policies for different applications to those unique location profiles. So now that that's done, you see that we're now looking at the Kasten job status page that shows you all of the steps that are happening. And you'll see here, oh, we just lost it. It was very quick. But at the very end, what it showed you was it went through and it backed up the application locally. It created the snapshot. It then authenticated to Vault and applied the Vault policies like immutability. And then it backed up that data and exported that snapshot off to Vault. And we had a successful backup of that Pacman application. So let me go back into the slides here. Perfect. So thank you for walking through the demo. Hopefully it was a good way just to see a very quick snapshot, no pun intended, of Kasten backing up and protecting your applications into the fully managed environment of VDC Vault. If you'd like to know more information about Kasten, here's a great QR code you can scan and just learn about where we sit in the Kubernetes data protection world, some case studies on successes we've had in protecting mission critical Kubernetes data for various enterprises. But you can really dig into this GigaOM report as well, which is a great report on the state of Kasten. And then likewise, some follow-up on Vault itself, just to understand kind of Vault's architecture, focus on security, focus on immutability. And again, some of those use cases where we've helped customers who need or want a fully managed backup solution that is fully secure. As Jacob mentioned, air-gapped immutability by default, a really nice managed platform and managed backup provider for various data sources, but in particular in this conversation for your Kubernetes persistent data. And with that, I will say thank you. I'll ask Jacob if there's anything else he would like to add, but if not, thank you for joining. Really happy to talk about Vault and the integration with Kasten and using that managed service to protect your persistent Kubernetes data.